All right, here we go. Brand new Flyers Daily for the 10th of February, 2024. Flyers Daily, as always, presented by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. Flyers, game 2 of a 3-game homestand will be tonight at Wells Fargo Center when they welcome former Flyer coach Dave Hackstall back to Philadelphia. And the Flyers will take on the Seattle Kraken tonight. These two teams faced each other back on the 29th of December. It was a 2-1 overtime win for Seattle. Here's what the two teams have done since that game. Flyers have played 17 games, a record of 8-1. Seattle hasn't played as many games. They've only played 13 games, but they are 7-5-1 over that stretch. And matter of fact, that win over the Flyers was in the middle of what turned out to be a 9-game win streak for Seattle. They went from December 20th all the way to the 13th of January, rattled off 9 straight wins before and after the Christmas break, and then promptly lost 4 straight games, 3 of them on the road, 1 of them at home. Then they beat Chicago 6-2. Then they lost to St. Louis in overtime, beat Columbus on the 28th of January, and then lost to the San Jose Sharks 2-0 in their last game. And that was the first game of this road trip for the Seattle Kraken. This is the first game out east for the Kraken. And obviously, they're just coming off their break. Flyers have already had 2 games since their break ended, but this will be the first opportunity for Seattle to get back after their unofficial second half of the season. They'll be in Philadelphia, New Jersey, the New York Islanders, and Boston Bruins before they return home on February 19th. This Seattle team, it's really interesting because you look at their schedule, and like a lot of teams that are in that category where they are, really the only teams that are kind of immune from the kind of run of bad result and the run of good result are the upper crust teams in the league and the very bottom crust teams in the league. But Seattle's one of those teams. They lost 5 of 6 games back from November 4th to November 15th. Then they won 3 of 4. Then they lost 9 straight games from February or November 24th to December 10th. Then they win 2, lose 2. Then they rattle off the 9 straight wins. Now they're in this period where they have lost 6 of their last 8 games. So they're a team that runs hot and cold, and we'll see how they come out of the break. Flyers have obviously come out of the break very well, and stem a 5-game losing skid that doesn't bleed over to the portion after the All-Star break, which I think was really important. They get a 2-1 win in Florida this past Tuesday, and then their last game on Thursday, obviously that 4-1 win over the Winnipeg Jets, who they swept in the season series. And since these two teams played last, those games since, the Flyers have only averaged 2.76 goals per game and have allowed 3.23 goals per game. There's a couple of lopsided games in there. Thinking about Colorado in particular and Boston. Colorado hung a 7 spot on the Flyers and 6 against the Boston Bruins. Seattle, since these two teams last played, have averaged 3.15 goals per game, good number, and have only allowed 2.53 goals per game. Flyers 8-1, and like I said, Seattle 7-5-1. Flyers have gone 9 for 53 on the power play, clicking at just under 17%, 16.98%, and Seattle's gone 7 for 28, 25%. They're clicking on the power play, so they've been very efficient of late. Not a lot of power plays, but they've been efficient when they've been on it. The PK for the two teams, Flyers 86.2%, and Seattle has been clicking at 75%. The Flyers PK has been really consistent for pretty much the entirety of this season, and they get another shorthanded goal in that last game as well, an important goal for the Flyers in that game. It was the 4th. It was off the stick of Ryan Poehling, which gave the Flyers their 11th shorty of the season. So Flyers in Seattle coming up tonight, the middle game of this 3-game road trip. It'll be an interesting week of Flyers hockey because a week from today is the outdoor game, the Stadium Series game at MetLife Stadium against the New Jersey Devils, but not an overly busy week for the Flyers. This month of February is not one of those super busy ram jam, tons of games kind of month that we'll see again, frankly, in March, and that we obviously saw in the month of January for the Flyers and many teams around the league. So this is an opportunity maybe to grab some practice time, bank a little bit of energy. But John Tortorella is going to want to see his team play a much more complete game than they did in either of the two games since they've been back. They won both of them, but their first period against Florida was not good enough, although they survived it behind the goaltending of Sam Ersson, and then played a really good second and third period. And then the last game against Winnipeg staked a 3-0 lead in the first period, but then really let their foot off the gas in the second and third period and got away with it. So we'll see if that was an opportunity for John Tortorella to use that for some messaging about playing complete games. This time of year, you just can't. You're in a really tight playoff race. You can't afford to cough one up when that happens. They haven't done that since they've been back so far, but you got to kind of guard against that in advance so it doesn't happen, because 2 points can absolutely be the difference between going to the postseason and not going to the postseason. Oliver Bjorkstrand still leads the way for Seattle in points. You know, it's amazing. Some teams you look in the league, they get multiple guys over a point per game. Bjorkstrand's got 40 points in 50 games. He's their leading scorer, 13 goals and 27 assists. This is a by-committee team as well, very similar to the Flyers. 46 games for Vince Dunn on that blue line. He's got 37 points, including 10 assists on the power play. Jared McCann's got 35 points, and Eli Tolvanen has got 30 for this Seattle Kraken team. I imagine it will be Sam Ersson once again. John Tortorella talked about usage of Ersson in this month where it's not that busy, but did say they are going to have to find spots for Cal Peterson. You're not going to be able to ride Sam Ersson every single game, and because if you do, you're going to ride him into the ground. We'll see who gets the start for Seattle. Joey Decourt, who we saw in that last game, played really good, handled the puck well in that game, if I recall as well. 15 wins, 9 losses, 9 overtime losses, 2.32 goals against average, and a very gaudy 9.21 save percentage. Again, this is in 34 games. He's having a very, very good season for the Seattle Kraken. So Flyers Kraken tonight. And now that the team has returned from the All-Star break and we're kind of getting back into the rhythm of the season, I thought today would be a good opportunity to take the temperature of Flyer fans, get their feelings, because we all know that the 5-game skid, and as I referred to, you know, a certain portion of the fan base as the dirt and shovel brigade. Whenever the Flyers stumble, they're standing by with the dirt and the shovel ready to pour dirt on them and bury them for the season. When in an 82-game NHL season, it's full of ebbs and flows, good results and bad results, some periods where it looks like the team can't lose, and some periods where it looks like they can't win. But back from the break now, first 2 games, 2-1 win over Florida, a very good team. And you look at Florida, I mean, they're the 4th highest points percentage team in the NHL at .667 points percentage this season. And then they beat Winnipeg the other night at home, who is the 5th highest points percentage team in the NHL at .663 percentage. Flyers, by the way, 14th in the NHL at .577 on the points percentage. So I thought it was a good opportunity to ask Flyer fans just a real simple question. How you feeling right now? How you feeling about, you know, the team being back and a playoff push and everything that goes with it? You had the 5-game win streak, capped off with that game against the Dallas Stars, the 5-1 win, probably their best win and most impressive showing of the year, followed by the 5-game skid where McKinnon and Kucherov, and you look at David Pastrnak, and they got it handed to them for those 5 games. How you feeling now that the dust is kind of settled a little bit and the team's got back-to-back wins? Joseph Schumacher tweeted and said, he said, I'm back to listening to every game and watching them when I can find them on my stream. Also have a 2-year-old son saying, go fly hockey, which shows I'm doing something right as a dad. Yeah, you are doing a great job, Joseph, as a dad, getting your little one into it at a very young age, which is awesome. And yeah, I mean, it's been compelling. It's been fun to watch. It's been fun to go through, even the periods when, you know, the 5-game skid or when things didn't go well on that trip to Seattle, then Calgary and Edmonton. They've still been an intriguing team to watch. Jason McNeil tweeted in and said, here's his feelings. Fun, fast, work. Excellent PK over the last year when 27 was in game 71 last year. So it took them 71 games to get to where they are now. and they got a lot of runway left here, 30 games to go. He said, controversies dealt with in a straightforward, no BS manner. Everyone buying in, accountability, still sell at the deadline and make the playoffs, make game 83. How can't Torts not win the Jack Adams? In Torts, I trust. Well, there's a couple guys in that conversation for Jack Adams, and Torts, if the season ended today, which it doesn't, would absolutely be in that conversation. I think you have to look at former Flyer Rick Tocchet as well. He's got the Vancouver Canucks. They were not a playoff team last year. He's got them humming this season, and he's done a really nice job there. They're the top team in the NHL, tied in points percentage with the Boston Bruins, and they're buying. They trade for Elias Lindholm. They're a team that's going for it. So he'll be in that conversation as well. But Torts, I think, has done a really good job this year, and I think part of it is, if you saw the press conference after the game against the Winnipeg Jets, where they win the game 4-1, they don't have many rock and share ride wins in third periods of this year. He was not happy, and he was not pleased with the play, the compete level, and the execution of his team in the final 2 periods of that game, because he knows that if that's something that persists, that will cost them. They got away with it, but that will cost them. So it's a coach's job to stay on top of that, not let it slide because you got a good result. And, I think that's a very good trait of John Tortorella's. Flyers Ginger Ambassador at Yarnballer Kev, frequent tweeter to the program. He said, it is definitely just fun. I'm enjoying this ride, and wherever it goes, it goes. He goes, I know being a GM is not an easy job, but the PTSD of the previous regime still leaves me somewhat on guard. Really excited to see this plan unfold and how Danny handles the trade deadline and the next draft. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I agree, Kev, because, they're a team that has regained something you really want as a GM. That's leverage. You have guys that other teams want, whether that's, expiring contracts like Sean Walker, Nick Seeler, or others. And you have guys that aren't on expiring deals like Rasmus Ristolainen or Scott Lawton, and how, you're only going to move those guys. You're not looking to move some of them, but you're going to move them only if you get I call it the Godfather deal. And I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. That's a bad impression. But if you get such a good offer, Torts has said it, you can't fall in love. You got to make those tough decisions. So how the deadline plays out, how the draft plays out will be a conversation for the offseason. But it has been fun to watch. And I understand the PTSD. I do. Because, the team was messaging different messages, and it seemed like there was a lack of commitment to whatever the plan was, not only season to season, but sometimes month to month. And that has not been an issue under this regime with Danny Briere as the general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers. Delco O'Brien speaks to that as well. He says the Hilferty, Jonesy, Briere trinity have restored faith they can do what their predecessors could not: manage the cap, identify and develop prospects, and let Torts coach a competitive roster. He said, even if a swoon happens after the All-Star game or deadline, 23-24 has been a success. Look, if they don't make the playoffs and they really limp down the stretch, it's going to sting. Even though we didn't expect this, it's still going to sting, because now the team has performed well. You see what they can do. And again, we'll see how the deadline plays out, injury, all that stuff. But it has been a huge step forward. And I don't just mean with the players on the ice. I am talking about organizationally. It's been a huge step forward in a reconnection between the Flyers franchise and their fans. And that is a great thing. How about this? Our next one comes kind of in the same vein from my good friend, John Kincaid. Of course, Kincaid on the morning show on 97.5 The Fanatic, the Flyers radio network. And John coached me in high school. So he and I have been talking hockey since about 1987. But John says the following. He said, I'm tired of being told, quote, this year isn't about the playoffs. He said, of course, it wasn't. But if you have a chance to make the playoffs, enjoy the ride and don't apologize for being pumped up about it. He said, I don't want them buying at the deadline, but I'm now torn about any potential selling, which is a great point because, these players have earned their way to being in this position of being a playoff team. How, some people go, well, if you sell some players off, you're not rewarding that. Now, some people think you need to reward a team that's put themselves in this position by buying. I don't agree with that. But selling players off could be something that, lets the air out of the locker room and, becomes, an issue. I don't know that is the case. Look, Mike and Philly responded to John's tweet and said they need a top level 1C and a 1D, and you can't get them both via trade or from free agency. So at least one of them need to come via the draft, and we ain't getting that level of prospect with a late first round pick. So that is why some fans aren't happy with winning ahead of a schedule in this rebuild. And look, and I pointed out that there are several stars in the NHL that weren't taken at the top of the first round. David Pastrnak, 25th overall. Nikita Kucherov, 58th. McAvoy, 14th overall. The number 1D, game-changing player. Braden Point was taken in the third round, 79th overall. And countless other players. But he went on to say that, when you look at, there's 1,000 examples where that doesn't happen. He said, I'm a huge fan and respect your opinion, but for every one of those anomalies that you gave, I can give you 100 failures. But I can also give you 100 top 5 pick failures. I mean, look, we don't have to go back that far in Philadelphia. 2017, Nolan Patrick was a number 2 overall failure. Nail Jakub. They're not guarantees. They're not a guaranteed ticket out. Is it a greater percentage? Of course. I totally agree. He said, I think we can all agree it's much easier to get a star 1C in the top 5 to 10 than it is to hope you get a steal later in the first round. It's a rebuild, so do it right. So I asked him, I said, I don't disagree, and you got to do a rebuild right. But what is doing it right? Is it stinking on purpose? I will never buy into that, as we've talked about here on the podcast a number of times. Never buy into that. So we'll see where that goes. But the team very likely not going to draft in the top 5. John V says, this is fun. Rather have this than the apathy of the last few years. And again, if you wanted the team to not win or they're winning ahead of schedule, then you didn't want Joel Farabee to have a bounce back and be a good player. You didn't want Travis Sanheim to have a bounce back and be a good player. You didn't want Cam York to continue to develop. You didn't want Owen Tippett to continue to develop. You didn't want Tyson Forster to continue to develop. You're hoping for failure, but there's so many young players on this team that you're almost cutting off your nose to spite your face. Mike Butts says, I was there last night, meaning the night against Winnipeg, and he said, and they can talk about the last 40 minutes, but this is a much better than we were pre-break. I didn't love their second and third period of the Winnipeg game. I really didn't. Chuck Peters, arguably the most fun hockey I've seen in years. This season has been a breath of fresh air. And even if we don't make the playoffs, I'm happy with how unexpectedly exciting this team has been. And one more, Roberto says, this season has been a great surprise. Every time they're supposed to start getting whooped, they just keep winning. I could definitely see them winning a playoff round, but I also feel this is lightning in a bottle with everyone playing above their heads. Sell, baby, sell. Well, that's an interesting thought. Is this year the byproduct of everyone playing above their heads? I don't know that to be true. Let me look at some examples. Travis Konechny had a great year last year. He had 61 points in 63 games. He's having a great year this year. So that's not lightning in a bottle. He's done it 2 years in a row, and he's a 2-time All-Star. Should be 3-time All-Star. Owen Tippett, at 25 years of age, continues to develop. And he's turning into a player that can be a difference maker. Not a superstar, but a difference maker. Look at Cam York. He's played a lot of top pair and has not looked out of place. I don't think that's him playing above his head. I think there's still some things to work on there. Same with Jamie Drysdale. Same with Travis Sanheim, who's a little bit older. I don't think that it's been a situation where they've played above their head. I think some guys are having some good years. Some guys are having not great years. Cam Atkinson was benched in the third period of the game against Winnipeg. He was a healthy scratch earlier this season. He went 26 games without a goal, the longest stretch of his career. Scott Lawton's points are down considerably. Noah Cates has 2 goals on the season and missed a lot of time out with injury. So I think the return of Sean Couturier has helped a ton, and maybe we underestimated his return. I know I did. I know a lot of people did. But I don't think this is a situation where you see players playing above their head, and that's why they are where they are. I think Brad Shaw and Torts have done a good job unlocking players like Sean Walker and like Rasmus Ristolainen. I think that's helped. Obviously, the goaltending that they've had all year and now with Sam Ersson is a big element. Look, if you don't have goaltending in this league, forget it. You're dead. And they've had goaltending. They've gotten goaltending. Now it's a little bit of a question mark because Hart's not here, and it's Cal Peterson as the backup, at least for now. How's he going to perform in the games that he gets? Are they going to be quality starts? So I don't look at it as a team that's playing above their head. I look at it as a team that's played well, a team that's together, a team that plays hard, and a team that has been opportunistic. And I don't think this is kind of a flash in the pan. I don't see it that way. All right. That's great stuff from everybody. Thanks for tweeting in. I appreciate the correspondence as always. Flyers, Seattle Kraken tonight at Wells Fargo Center. We'll break it down tomorrow. Join us then on a brand new Flyers Daily.